Hi, my name's Lauren Hunt. I'm a therapist at Access Counseling Services, and I work primarily out of Amanda Elementary. I am here today to talk about communication, as communication can be seen as a key resource while working with our students, amongst our friends, and amongst our family. So, what exactly is communication? When I talk about communication, people tend to just think automatically about talking with one another or sending and receiving information from one to another. But communication is so much more important than just that. Communication, especially amongst others, can be demonstrated differently depending on how your attitude is and what effort you are making towards the other person while discussing things with them. Communication is not always verbal. A lot of it also is nonverbal. Communication is said to possibly be one of the most important life skills that someone can have. That is why it's so important for us to understand communication and how effective it is. Communication helps us in our personal life with our family and friends, and it also helps us in our professional life with our students, their families, and our coworkers. With communication, that can help us build and maintain relationships throughout our lives. However, poor communication could lead to breaking up relationships. Communication helps us understand things quickly and adequately. It also helps us learn, understand, and transfer information from one individual to another. Have you ever heard the phrase, actions speak louder than words? There's those nonverbals. It's very important to understand that our nonverbals sometimes speak louder than what we're saying. People may hear your words, but they feel your attitude. Let's look at different types of communications. First, we have vocal. That's going to be the dialogue verbally that we have with one another. Next, written media. Magazines, newspapers. Those are more like written media. How about visual? Visual can be the things that we see. The TV programs, the documentary, advertisements. Lastly, nonverbal. That's going to be our body language, our facial communication with one another. There are different styles of communication that we will look at: passive, passive aggressive, and assertive. An individual who is passive may believe that the rights in others are more important than their own. They may communicate in a way that is emotionally dishonest, indirect, blaming, and apologetic. There are many individuals who will communicate passively. Next, we'll look at aggressive. Aggressive communicators believe that their rights and needs prevail over others they are communicating with. Therefore, they will be inappropriately honest when communicating, very direct, sometimes attacking, blaming, controlling, and self-enhancing at the expense of others. Passive aggressive. If we are not careful, passive aggressive behaviors come out frequently. An individual communicating passive aggressively may make it clear that their rights and needs prevail. They may communicate emotionally dishonestly, indirect, self-enhancing at the expense of others later. Lastly, assertive. Assertive communication is what many people strive to do. They clearly express that both parties involved in the communication have rights and needs that are both important. An individual communicating assertively will appropriately be honest, they'll be direct, but not too direct, self-enhancing, expressive. They'll be self-confident in what they speak, how they speak. They'll be empathetic and concerned how others feel. It is important to understand and know your style of communication and how you are communicating with others. All right, now let's take a closer look at two important forms of communication, verbal and nonverbal. All right, let's look at nonverbal communication examples. Here are some below. Your posture, your body language, the eye contact you're making, the facial expression you're using, the spacing between you and the other person. How about the gestures or the timing of which you want to speak? These are all very important when communicating with people. This is one of my favorite pictures to demonstrate nonverbal communication. In this picture, we're not quite sure what's happening, but it may be a race. And we're not sure if this front runner has won or not. However, with the nonverbal communication of the hands up in the air, the body language, the facial expression, it all looks like he may have won the race. This is a great example of how nonverbal communication allows the person to know what's happening in the picture. Our body language is so important, as we have just seen in the previous photo. Our body language provides messages to the other person that we're communicating with by our body movements, facial expressions, maybe a physical touch, gestures, the space that we leave between ourselves and the other individual, eye contact, and the way we position our body. Let's look at some examples. Now, let's look at a picture and see what you think about the situation. Imagine you're the person up front and think about how you would feel about the people in the back. Do you notice the people in the back's hands are covering their mouths? How about the distance between one another? How about the eye contact? All of these things added up, the person in the front may feel that these two are talking about them. They could be talking about sports, the weather, something going on outside. They could be talking about anything. But because of their body language, the person in the front may feel like they're talking about her. That is how nonverbal communication affects others. Let's take a minute and look at some students. Here's a set of 4 students. Some may look sad or confused, maybe even hungry. What do you see in these pictures? Those last pictures may have jogged your memory about some of your students, maybe even on their first day. So here are some reasons why those students may have looked the way they did and gave off those nonverbal cues. Maybe they're scared to meet new people. Maybe they're scared to be away from their parents because their parents were fighting. Are they doing bad in school? Are they going to go home and have repercussions because they're not doing good at school? Maybe they're just scared to go home. Are there other kids who are bullying them at school? Maybe they're scared to be away from their siblings because they're not at home watching them. Maybe they're hungry. Have they not eaten since yesterday at school? Or maybe it's Monday and they haven't eaten since Friday. How about a fear of being around adults? Has an adult in their life broken their trust and now they're scared to trust adults again and they don't feel safe? These are some great things to look out for in our students. Let's look at another example. Here are some other great scenarios that we might look at nonverbal cues. Teachers work really hard. The staff at schools work really hard. So when they see kids not doing their homework or falling asleep in class, it can be really aggravating. What do you see in these pictures? How about that teenage kid who just will not stay awake in your class no matter what you do? They just don't have any interest in school whatsoever. Or how about the kid who doesn't bring in their homework? You see them in class all the time and they look like they're paying attention, but they actually never do any homework at all. Or how about that other kid who did half their project, brought it in, and had yet another excuse as to why their project wasn't done? We see these every day in our school systems. What do we not see? Some things that we may not see that might be going on with our kiddos and teenagers in the class is maybe their families have been fighting and kept them up all night because it was so loud. Maybe they have to babysit their siblings all night because somebody in the family has to work. Maybe they have to work themselves to help their family pay bills. How about trauma? Going to sleep at night can bring up all those traumatic memories or experiences that they've had in their lives. Maybe they were up all night doing their homework after working a 7 or 8 hour shift after school. Maybe their parents or guardians have to work and have to leave them alone at night at home, so they can't sleep because all they hear is the noises in the house that keep them up all night. These are important things to look out for in your students. It's important to know not only about your students, but what may be happening within the home environment that you're not aware of. That way, we can work together to help these students become successful. Please feel free to take a moment to look at these additional resources on nonverbal communication. Verbal communication is just as important as nonverbal communication. Knowing and understanding the vocabulary in which you are going to convey your message is important so that the other person you are having a dialogue with understands what you are trying to say. Verbal communication is the use of words to share information from one to another. Fun fact, verbal communication is not only spoken, but it can also be written language. Some of the different types of verbal communication that we recognize are below. First one being oral communication. This is the face-to-face conversations that we have with one another. Next, written communication. This will be electronic mail, websites, letters, telegrams, faxes, postcards, and advertisements. Lastly, mediated communication. Emails, network, instant messaging, texting, distance learning, and video conferencing. There are other verbal communications that you can look at, but these are the ones that are most commonly known. Let's look at some interventions that you can use to communicate better with your students in the classroom. When working with students in your classroom, it is best to respond directly to the student themselves and not their behavior. When they exhibit negative or aggressive behaviors, it is important as a teacher not to take these behaviors personally. Learn and understand students' behaviors and what they mean. It is easy throughout the year to start learning and understanding your students. However, it is better to know sooner rather than later these behaviors and why they demonstrate different behaviors. Collaboration may be key. Talking with these students' families, learning more about them, talking with the student, and setting them up for success is extremely important in the classroom setting. Read between what they are saying and doing. When the student is saying everything is okay, but their nonverbal cues is demonstrating something different, make sure that you are asking and talking with the student and their families to ensure everything is going okay. When in doubt, always ask for help. It is important in the school setting that we work as a team. You are never alone and shouldn't feel alone. Always ask for help when it is needed. Please take a moment and look at the additional resource on verbal communication. Here's a great list of resources that you can use within your classroom to teach your students more about communication, the importance of communication, and the importance of nonverbal cues. As we come to a close, I would like to leave you with these last few tips. Stop and listen. Force yourself to really hear what's being said. Be open and honest. Pay attention to nonverbal cues from those around you. Stay focused in the here and now. Thank you so very much for listening to this, and have a great rest of your day.